Start finding you a seat, please, one of your choice. And there are several up front here that are empty. The countdown is now 2 minutes, 32 seconds. Excuse me, 2 minutes, 30 seconds. No, 2 minutes, 28 seconds. Oh, I'm sorry. I would like to remind everyone, if you have a cell phone, please turn it off. We don't want any interruptions here. Well, good morning. Good morning. Or as we say in Tennessee, howdy. So it's good to see everyone this morning. I hope everyone's in good spirits, feeling good and ready to give forth with some joyful noises. So this time, I'd like for everyone to stand. Please take your hymnals, turn to page 62. Good start. Let's turn back to page 43, and after we sing this one, Mr. Robert James will give the opening prayer. Number 43.
Heavenly Father and great God, we pause now to thank you, Father, for bringing us out of this world and bringing us here and giving us understanding of your holy days, understanding of the Feast of Tabernacles, understanding of what it means of 1,000-year hope. And Heavenly Father, we thank you for the messages that we have had and the messages that are to come. We ask you to ask your blessing over this service in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I remember a man some years ago who said, if you don't know something, you don't know that you don't know it. But right now we have a man who knows something, and we're going to call him up here to the podium, and he gives us a good update and some good knowledge that applies to the Word of God. Mr. Mark Armstrong.
That might have been premature. I hope y'all are having a good feast down here. I almost feel guilty. I've had so much fun since I arrived yesterday afternoon. And I've run into a lot of people who are obviously enjoying the feast the way it was intended to be enjoyed. I'm sorry our numbers are a little depressed down here this year, but look what the people that come to this feast site have gone through. And I'll bet a lot of you went through it too, didn't you? With the hurricane and the flooding. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but I know that even Robert got hard hit in Fayetteville, and poor old Walt has been out doing, did he tell me 90 hours? Is there that many hours in a week? I don't know how. Out with a chainsaw, and oh my goodness, so many people. And I wouldn't be surprised if our dearth in number here isn't explained by some people who are probably still trying to get the carpet out of their house or dry out the walls, or who knows. But anyway, I'm sure that all of you have said prayers for yourselves and for your travels the way down here, because I know that there are sections of I-95 that are out. There are even a lot of these probably detour roads that are in trouble. Walt told me that he was pulling a little feast trailer. Now you can imagine, you're pulling a little short trailer behind a pickup on a little old 2-lane road, and then you get to a lake where the road used to be. And he told me he had to back up for miles with a little short trailer on the back of his pickup. Well, anybody who's ever tried to back a little short trailer knows that, I mean, just the slightest mistake and you'll be jackknifed before you know what's happening. I asked him, how many times did you have to pull forward and line up and go again? Because he had to back up for miles with that. He said 3 or 4. Well, I come from Panama City. Yeah, I hate to tell you this. Some of the missing numbers are down there, and all of you know that. Anyway, they're having absolutely spectacular conditions and beautiful weather down there, just like you're having here. I was lucky enough to have Walt pick me up from the airport yesterday, and he got me out to a golf course where the conditions were just immaculate. You know, in the twilight hours, and you know, you almost wouldn't know that there had been a disaster here within the last 10 days, except several beautiful big trees that were hung completely over with the root ball sticking up in the air and the whole 9 yards. But other than that, it was spectacular, and I really enjoyed the time I've got to spend with several of you, and I hope that everybody that wants to see me better make haste after church, because I've got another airplane to catch, unfortunately. I got to tell you a little story that relates to, actually relates to some of this. And I know that you've seen this magazine, and you know, it's, you might have stopped looking at it when you saw the idea that Britain is leaving, the little lifeboat Britain is leaving the EU, which is the big ship. I hope you will take time to look at the details that are in this artwork, because there are probably about 20 or 30 details, each of which could deserve an entire article or a book or a whole, you know, a whole discussion. Actually, I could have easily used this cover as notes and just spent the next 30 or 40 minutes going over the fine details. But the idea that you got this EU ship with the little flag of Islam flying over the EU, the tattered EU banner, and you got Angela Merkel up in the crow's nest with the little German flag, and she's shouting, more immigrants, more immigrants. And then there's so many details. The ghosts are firing their cannon at the little British lifeboat as it sails away from the ship of the EU. And then you've got a Muslim and Arabic guard who is trying to molest the carving on the front of the ship, which is, of course, a nude woman. And of course, you got the economic disaster that's coming like a water spout at the ship, and you got the shark as also attacking as the failed economy. You've got the anchor going down over the waterfall, and that is European debt. And like I said, everything in every detail of this rings absolutely true And it would be good to research, if you have the capability to do it, the detail of each one of these little items that are put on the boat. And I've only told you about half of them. So don't just glance at that cover and say, oh yeah, that's interesting, and then go splitting through the magazine, because I still find more in there every time I come back. And it just says so much. And I think that you know that this is a prophetic event. Britain leaving the European Union is something that I have been hearing and knowing that was going eventually to happen since I was a little boy. This is something that my grandfather, Herbert W. Armstrong, was sounding the alarm about. This is something, and Grandpa Armstrong dead now 30 years. 30 years since Herbert W. Armstrong passed. And of course, he fully expected all this was going to transpire in his own lifetime, as did my dad, who preached his heart out and foretold this very thing, and so much of what is happening right now, right here. You turn on your daily news and it is just about everywhere. I told them in Panama City Beach, I said, you know, we are commanded to rejoice at the feast. And with that in mind, you might want to limit your consumption of campaign coverage, because it's enough to make you sick. I also told them, obviously, I can't say a whole lot about the political campaign, because we're just not supposed to do that as part of our government charter as a nonprofit organization. We don't get involved in campaigning for political figures who are running for office, and wouldn't anyway, tell you the absolute truth, because you get caught every which way. But I don't mind repeating, or at least drawing your attention to something that my dad said. And I believe it was, I know where it was in Jackson, Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi. And it was on Pentecost at one of my dad's, it was a Holy Day meeting, 2 or 3 groups who were in attendance there. And obviously, we didn't know what the circumstances would be in 2016. But Dad said, and if Hillary Clinton ever gets to be the president of the United States, he said, that'll be the end of it. And he also calculated, surmised, or expected that the onset of tribulation might come under a female president. I thought of something. I don't know whether or not you may have contemplated this or not, but it's absolutely true that Angela Merkel, who is the president or prime minister, whatever her title is, at the head of Germany, a non-Israelitish country, now rules over the Israelitish nations of Europe. And as long as England has been in the EU, which it still technically is, the divorce has not happened. It's not legal yet. They're only starting the legal aspects of Britain's divorce from the European Union this next March. I have a couple of scriptures, and I'm going to direct your attention to them. Maybe I actually had to call Michael and ask him to find this for me, ask him where it is, because he can find anything on his little gizmo in a moment's notice, and I'm not that good about it. Isaiah 3 and verse 12, and you don't have to look it up, because you're going to, unless you don't believe me that it's there, but you've heard it. It's going to be ringing in your ears, where it says, as for my people, women will rule over them. Nothing against you ladies. This is God's word. As for my people, women will rule over them, and children will be their oppressors. Well, I don't need to go into much explanation about that. What you see, the college crowd and the Slake youth that we've got that need their little safe zones to protect their little ears and their little feelings from anything that might offend them, anything that breaks the college lounge ideology that they have been steeped in by the government since they were in preschool. But in the context of that scripture, and I'm going to get myself so tangled up here I may never see my way clear, but in the context of that scripture, a woman of non-Israelitish heritage over a non-Israelitish nation of Germany has been and is currently still ruling over the Israelitish nations of Europe and destroying their cultures, destroying their heritage, their history. Forget where they came from, forget their language, forget their currency. You know, get rid of the lira and the pound and various of those, the drachma, various. Well, that's not Israelitish. Don't get me wrong, but anyway, that has been borne out and is being borne out, and we're witness to it right here, right now. 30 years after the passing of my grandfather, who brought this to our attention so many years ago because of his understanding of the Bible and of the prophets, and my dad as well. And I would also bring your attention to the fact that these major prophets of the Old Testament who foretold these things that are happening now are the same prophets that foretold the coming of Jesus Christ in great detail, foretold his lineage, foretold his role, foretold everything about it. And then, you know, long after they're dead and gone, bang, it happens right according to the inspiration God gave them to put in this book. And I would suggest to you that we are seeing these things fulfilled now at a pace like we've never seen before. The things that my granddad was talking about in the well, how far back are we going to go? We go back as far as my collection goes, the 1960s and the 1970s and 80s and 90s. And here we've seen things heading in this direction, and now they are being fulfilled in so many ways. Isn't it interesting? I think we know that the Bible foretells a false prophet who's ultimately going to be allied with a 10-nation combination of nations over Europe that are going to rule the world and apparently rule over the United States. Certainly our current leaders would love to have us under all of their jurisdiction already. They'd already love to have us, and in a great many ways we already are. We've already been subjected to countless regulations and so forth that originated in the EU. Of course, they've gone farther than we have, and a great many of those who lead us and would lead us would put us in the same boat, where it is in some European nations and in Canada already a hate crime to be insulting toward the terrorist religion of Islam. If I'd have said that in Europe, they'd probably kick me out and never let me come back in. Probably even in England, you can't get away with saying something like that. I had an experience yesterday. For those of you who travel, you know, I don't even want to, well, do I want to talk about the TSA? Those are like terrorists in training, the people who are searching you, who are frisking you, who are checking your paperwork and so forth. I don't know that they don't hire those people just to anger the traveling public. I mutter under my breath and, you know, Lord help me if I should say out loud what I'm thinking when I go through that TSA. And when they separate me from my papers, it's like they violate about 4 or 5 of your constitutional rights between the time you get in line and the time you get to the terminal. You don't have any rights. You don't have any rights to uncalled for search, obviously. I mean, they make you get naked, okay, in realistic terms. You empty your pockets, you get everything, okay, that means your wallet, that means your change, your glasses, your papers, whatever you got, all got to go in a basket. It's all got to be x-rayed. Your watch, your jewelry, You better not have any shred of paper remaining on your body. There better not be a little receipt in your pocket that you forgot about, or here you go. Make like an airplane. Spread your legs because we're fixing to get personal. Oh man, I almost got myself worked up right here and now, and I'm gonna have to go through this right out here just in an hour and a half or two. I'm gonna have to go do this again. But you do not have any constitutional rights when you get to that wretched TSA, because you don't have a right to fly. That's a privilege. And so you must submit to the government intrusion into your own body. When I say you have to naked, you walk into the scanner and you put your hands over your head and you look straight ahead. It's like a mug shot. For your whole naked body, because they got a machine that sees right through your clothes in all great detail, and there are people in the back room who are watching it. That's what the government is doing there. You've got a strip search every time you get in there. I didn't intend to talk about this, but anyway, you can tell I'm eat up with it. It ticks me off. Every man, woman, and child either goes through the strip search electronically, or else you get a real personal frisking that will get extremely personal. And it just boggles the mind. You wonder why everybody's so happy. All these guys in the blue gloves, and they're just really happy to see you. They know they get a turn in the back room with the monitor here in a little bit. They get to rotate all around here. So they're having the time of their lives all day, every day, I guess. Anyway, blue gloved goon squad is what I call. Man, I need to get off of this quick. All right, so I'm going to tell you, I was heading down the catwalk when you go through the gate and they beat your boarding pass, and then they got little that goes down on the airplane, and that tends to back up. And so I had a couple behind me that was a little chatty, and they were talking about, oh boy, I can really feel the humidity. And I said, well, yeah, you didn't see nothing yet. And they just feel a little bit seeping through the cracks of the catwalk there. And I asked them, I said, well, where are you from? Well, we're from South Dakota. I said, well, I know that they've been putting a lot of these refugees into South Dakota. I've read about it and so forth. And I said, well, do the Muslims up there outnumber you yet? No, the gentleman said, we don't have that many. And I said, well, you might. I said, they have it now. They sneak them in there and they put them somewhere, and they don't even tell anybody. They don't tell the mayor. They don't tell the governor. They don't tell the population. It's not in the paper. They're putting them in there. And I said, they may be in there and you just haven't been told yet. He said, well, they have to tell my wife. She's in charge of their health care. I looked at her and I said, so you're involved in helping to bring them in? She said, well, I just take care of their health care. And I said, well, I'd give them a one-way ticket to somewhere else. I wish I'd have been a little quicker on my feet. And if I run into them again, I'm ready. Because I'm going to say, well, we want our suicide bombers to be as healthy as possible. We want them to really feel good, the day that they pull the cord. Maybe that's not funny, but I think I offended her as it was. I think they were, terribly offended, because here she is. She's making government money taking care of these people and their children who are gonna, I don't want to foretell too much. I don't want to put myself in some role that I can't occupy and I don't deserve and I don't want. But at the rate that they're bringing them in here, we are going to see these attacks and these mass shootings and these bombs going off like popcorn all over the United States. We're going to see kidnappings and beheadings and all kinds of mayhem. And if you need any proof of what these people do or what they're like or how they act, just look at what's going on right now in the Middle East. The president finally, boy, he has got a big push. He's going to take care of Mosul. Okay, he's been 8 years. The spread of ISIS now has erupted there, has started in Iraq and all into Syria, and now it's spread to 32 countries, and we got ISIS devotees all over the United States. But boy, right here in the last weeks of this election, there's a big push. He wants to take over. He wants to take back Mosul so that they can, I guess, advertise that as a grand success of his administration and the Democratic Party. And I guess that would be intended to hand the election to Hillary on a silver platter. And what they're saying on television this morning, and as you always see, if you see any of the coverage of the war in Syria, what do you see? You see them digging the bodies of women and little children out of rubble. And of course, that is designed to break your heart. And it is heartbreaking because, you know, obviously those are little kids. Don't bear to be, don't deserve to be buried in concrete rubble. You know, they're not old enough to make any decisions for themselves. They don't bear any responsibility for that, and it is a desperate and a crying shame. But I saw just a few minutes that I watched it or had it on in the room as I was getting ready and trying to get my mind straightened out to come down here this morning, is that these terrorists are using the women and the children as human shields. And that's what they do. That's not what they do sometimes. That's what they do all the time. They don't go out and have a military base, or they don't have their soldiers in a camp or something. They're in the apartments, in the condos, in the civilian area. And they're in there just like Osama bin Laden was, with the women and the children. So you're going to take out ISIS? There's going to be a lot of women and children involved. There's just no other way, because that's what they do. They're cowardly. Well, I don't want to use any bad language, but I'm tempted. We live in a time here, even in our own country, that the Bible foretold, and I had a few of these scriptures. And I know that these applied to ancient Israel, but they also, as I told you, they also applied to the conditions of what the conditions would be like as we approach into the last days. And I don't know when the last days are. You know, Grandpa Armstrong thought it was in the early 70s for a long time. And I don't know what God's schedule is. But he, through God's inspiration, the prophet Isaiah in Isaiah 65:3 talked about a people who provoke God continually. I don't think that's something we want to do. But I think this political correctness, where abortion is a sacrament. Hey, you don't talk against abortion, and you don't do anything against abortion. You don't protest abortion. Or, you know, you're protesting a woman's right to choose. It's like, hey, this is the United States of America. She has a right. She has a right to have dominion over her own body. And I guess the life of the child that was engendered inside of her. Or, you know, this homosexuality business where, boy, you don't say anything against homosexuality, not in polite society. TV, I mean, they're cramming these people in our faces all day and all night. We are getting lectured. We're having the news analyzed. We're having the political campaign analyzed, and we're being lectured on a daily basis. If you watch any of the news or listen to any of the news that's coming out by one homosexual after another, and they are proud. They're loud and they're proud. And you better not say anything about it. And I'm going to draw your attention to something that presumably you know, or maybe you don't. But every single night on CNN, in prime time, their most watched programming, you got one homosexual anchor who's got his panel, and there's liable to be one or two on the panel, not to mention a couple of communists and fascists and so forth and so on, who are just, you know, the most delightful and smartest people you'd ever want to meet. And then one homosexual anchor hands off at the end of his program to another homosexual anchor. And there you go. That's all of prime time on CNN every single night. You're getting your news analyzed You're getting, current events fed to you by people who are engaged in a lifestyle and promoting to you and to me and to all of us a lifestyle that is absolutely condemned and abhorrent to God. Talk of people who provoke God continuously. Whoever thought that people would be the citizens of the United States of America? But here we are. I mean, we can talk about things like this. You wouldn't dare go out. Would I dare? Would any of this ever dare? Not that I want to be on TV. I don't. I could if I wanted to. I don't. Because I want to be able to speak freely. And that's what I'm going to do. And that's what this magazine does. And that's what Dad did. But Dad wasn't here to see what would happen to us and what would be force-fed to our children and to our grandchildren in this age. Dad never saw Barack Hussein Obama coming. And I don't know if he really saw Hillary coming or not, but the very thought of it was something that he drew attention to clear back in the year 2000. And then you just go across the page from Isaiah 65:3 to Isaiah 66:3. And it also talks about the self-righteousness of evil, of people who treat absolute satanic evil as a badge of righteousness. Isaiah 66:3 says, yea, they have chosen their own ways. Now this was talking about Israel going off after other gods and creating their own religious exercises and their own oblations and feeling so proud and so righteous of themselves. This is, of course, before they get overthrown and thrown into captivity in Babylon. Yea, they have chosen their own ways, and their souls delight in their abomination. They feel so good and so righteous about it. I don't know if you've heard this story. I just heard it a couple days ago and told them down in Panama City Beach. There's a group of bikers, motorcyclists, that are riding in a group, and they come up to a bridge. And in the distance, as they approach, they see a girl standing up on one of the columns of the bridge. And so they all slow down, pull over, and stop. And the leader of this motorcycle group, big burly guy, he's carefully, he strides to this girl. He says, what are you doing? And she says, I'm about to commit suicide. Well, he didn't want to seem insensitive, so he came a little closer and he says, well, listen, before you jump, would you do me a favor and give me a kiss? And she said, oh, okay. Well, this turned out to be a long and deep and lingering kiss. And the biker said, well, you've got a special talent. Obviously you have a lot of emotion and a lot of feeling, and why in the world would you want to kill yourself? And she said, well, it's because my parents hate it when I dress up like a girl. 5 years ago, nobody had got this joke, and I think y'all just barely did. That's pretty sick that we think it's funny. I don't know if you saw this report the other day. I didn't read it. I heard it on the radio breaks, the national news, the ABC. I think I got radios on in my house. I got a radio that plays it's playing right now. I'm glad the power's on and the radio's playing at my house. And I heard this news break where they proudly announced that the United States ranks number 36th in freedom. Number 36. You know who's number one? Sweden. Sweden is the country that has taken the most of these Syrian and Somali and Iraqi Muslim refugees. They've taken them in by the boatload, by the trainload. And they feel real good about themselves. They're very self-righteous about the whole thing. Sweden is the one where teenage kids can't go to the movies anymore at night. I mean, you're not going to have a group of 3 or 4 girls going downtown to the club. It's just not going to happen, or even if they're early 20s or 30s or whatever. No, it is not safe for them to go out at night anymore. Downtown on the main streets and the main thoroughfares where the entertainment is, they better not do it, because they're going to be possibly kidnapped. They're going to be harassed at the very least, because now they've got roving gangs of these Muslim refugees who don't speak English, who are going to attack them, try to rape them, grope them. There have been thousands and tens of thousands of these things happen in recent months, over the past year and so forth in Europe. Now, we read about some of it. I hope you do. I hope you find some of these stories and these reports, and you know that in Europe, they feel so righteous, they feel so self-righteous about the importation of Muslims that the police will not charge people with these crimes when they are committed. You know why they won't charge them? Because if they charge them, then it's going to go in the newspaper, and there's going to be a court case, and there's going to be a mugshot. And that just will not do in the self-righteous atmosphere that they have created for themselves in Sweden. I just have another little news story that I saw in the last 48 hours or so. Sweden has made it legal for these immigrants to fly the ISIS battle flag. So you use black flag flying in Sweden, and it's all good. They're just supposed to feel good about it. You say anything like what I just said in Sweden, you've committed a hate crime. You'll get your mugshot. You'll get a lawsuit. You'll stand before a judge accused of a hate crime if you so much as reject or object to the idea that these immigrants can fly the ISIS battle flag. Maybe that's why they're so free in Sweden. And and we're not quite that free yet, but we're getting there, and we're getting there in a big hurry. Pretty soon, probably we'll be just as free as Sweden, and we'll see ISIS battle flags flying here and there, and we'll probably be forbidden to say anything about it. Well, much of what I've already said is it's so politically incorrect and all but forbidden. And I guarantee if some of these fascist, communist, would-be leaders get in charge of this country, it will be illegal. The Bible talks about a time when the word will no longer go out, when the warning will be stopped. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if at some point we are not stopped. Well, Europe is in a tailspin. Sweden obviously is in a tailspin. Imagine a place where your teenagers can't go out with their friends. Or in your 20s, or you can't go out. You better not. Or you're taking your life in your hands, and the cops are not going to be there to help you. They're so politically correct. I think Europe is in a tailspin and in great danger from a lot of various sources, and some of those are illustrated on that. I ask you again, take time and study and enjoy, and if you don't recognize what you're seeing in some of the details of that cover, look it up. Take your gizmo and look it up. I just saw in the last day or so, the architect, one of the inventors of the European currency, has come out and said it's only a matter of time. The European Central Bank has engaged in one bailout after another in Spain, and in Portugal, and in Greece. They've renegotiated that debt. They've lowered the payments. They've put it off another 30 years. But you know what? There's still defaults going on all over Europe. And one of the architects of the euro says, they can continue to do one bailout and one stop measure after another. It cannot go on forever. The European Central Bank is loaded with bad debt and junk bonds, and these things are going to go down the tubes. You look up something about Deutsche Bank. It's supposed to be one of the strongest financial institutions in the world, and yet they are in deep, deep trouble. If Deutsche Bank goes down, how many banks are connected to that? With them as the flagship institution, they're going to fall like dominoes. How much exposure do we have in our stock market, in our Federal Reserve Bank, and several of the big New York banks? How much exposure to that to Deutsche? Because that's the gold standard, and the European Central Bank. It's been the gold standard. Nobody had any qualms about doing business in that environment and with those institutions. So what happens? What happens to Angela Merkel? What happens to Claude Juncker? I think he pronounces it as a Y. It's a J. I like Juncker. He looks like it fits him just about right, and his attitude fits it as well. You know, Angela Merkel cannot go anywhere these days. We don't see this in our news. It's all this political claptrap, and now, you know, the move on Mosul, and that's about all we're going to get probably for the next month. Angela Merkel can't go attend a meeting, a public meeting or a ceremony or whatever it is, without having what they call hundreds of demonstrators. And these are the people who are daring over there. They're putting their freedom at risk by daring to demonstrate against the constant onslaught and influx of more and more Muslims who are absolutely destroying the history and destroying the culture of one city, one town, one country after another. So things are bad enough. These people have seen their neighborhoods, their cities, and their lives destroyed by this onslaught of people who are dangerous, who will kill, who will kidnap, who are raping little children, you know, all the time, constantly, all over Europe, and not even being charged, because they don't want that to be in the papers. They don't want it to be in the courts. They don't want it to be in the legal system. So they cover up these heinous crimes as if they never happened, and they let these people continue to circulate within society. I don't know how many of you heard this. Angela Merkel attended one of the, you know, they're saving the planet from global warming, so she had to go to these meetings. You know, if they could just get enough world leaders to all sign up, you know, this hurricane we had last week, it would never happen. As soon as, boy, those world leaders all sign on to their G20 format or conference agenda or whatever, we won't have any more bad weather, folks. Isn't that great? These people think they're God. They play God day and night, as if they can rule or control the weather. I think God's got a surprise or two in store for them. But these self-righteous European leaders, and I'm going to draw your attention to something. I actually have the news article, and I thought that I had used it on a trip and not in Tyler, but I've been reminded that I did tell about this in Tyler. I'm going to encourage you, if you want to look it up to see that the video is there, you might do that just to justify and to verify that this story is accurate, because it sounds so far-fetched that you'd almost be tempted to not believe it if you didn't see it. They built a tunnel under the Alps in Switzerland. So you can now get from one side of the Swiss Alps to the other without going up 11 or 12,000 feet, you know, on the windy road. Now you can take a straight shot through this tunnel under the mountains and get from one side of the Swiss Alps to the other. It took them 18 years to complete this project. And so when the tunnel was finished, they had a dedication ceremony. And at that ceremony was Angela Merkel, Claude Juncker, the heads of state from all the European countries. They were all assembled there. They were all sitting in their chairs, ready for this ceremony that took place. This ceremony consisted of 2 or 3 acts that constitute absolute worship of Satan, the devil. That sounds far-fetched. You guys are looking at me like I'm crazy. I know you are. You can't imagine that these self-righteous leaders who promote Muslim immigration into Europe and promote abortion and promote homosexuality and promote all this new age nonsense would be involved in a ceremony where they're smiling and applauding a play act, apparently quite an extensive and expensive production involving hundreds of actors that are absolutely in worship of evil. I've not seen it, but I know you can find it. I guess you can go on YouTube and you can watch it. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to be subjected. I don't want any of these images in my mind. You know, I know what it's about. Just keep it away from me. Keep it away from you. Keep it away from your kids. Keep it away. But it is there just to prove that it happened. And I know somebody that saw it and said it was just, it's shaking. It's jarring to your soul to see the leaders of Germany and the Israelitish nations of Europe and the southern nations of Europe as well, all sitting in their seats, smiling and applauding. And I'm going to just describe a little bit of it. They had all kinds of weird stuff. They apparently had all kinds of people that were going along as if they were automatons and they're all robotic and so forth, as if they're following a voice in their head or something, and they're all doing the same thing. They called them worker bees. And then they had all these women that are dressed up in angelic garb, and I don't know if they had trapezes or if they just floated around on their feet, but they all act like they're spirit beings in white flowing gowns. And then they have some idiot in goat horn costume, and they writhe around and whatever, and something happens and he gets killed. The goat man gets killed. But then he rises again. The dude in goat horns is resurrected. And all of these little angelic beings fall down and worship at his feet. And then you've got the leaders of Europe and the European Union all sitting there smiling and applauding. Oh, isn't that great what we have done? So what is that? I guess they dedicated their tunnel to Satan the devil. They literally, and you know, I got a few people, I'm not into the conspiracy theories. I know that there are those who say, oh man, you got to watch Alex Jones. I've heard Alex Jones say enough. I don't really want to watch him. Not that he doesn't stumble upon something that's accurate or truthful once in a while, but I've just heard him say some idiotic, stupid things, and I don't want to be associated. Or some of these other conspiracy theorist websites, I tend to stay away from them. And Dad did too. I mean, you know, you can't just not bury yourself in that, or you go stark staring mad. And I'm close to that. But my dad rejected a great many of the conspiracy theories, and there may be something to some of them. But I just cannot spend day and night living in that realm. But they'll tell you. And the Bible tells us that we do not just wrestle against flesh and blood, but our enemies are spiritual. And we know Satan used to be Lucifer, and he is the prince of the air. And they are brainwashing our little children in that air with the television and the cartoons, and good grief, the Muslim kids, they're watching suicide bomber cartoons. I've seen some of that, and probably you have too. Those little kids are just brainwashed from the word go in their schools, in their mosques, all day and all night. And our little kids are getting brainwashed too. Our little kids are getting brainwashed with global warming. I think that's absolutely a satanic drive, fib, a lie that our little kids are being steeped in from the time, that's why the government, they're so happy to provide the single mothers, preschool, Head Start. They need to get a hold of them when they're 4 and 5 years old and get them involved, in the peer pressure where, oh yeah, we all believe that, don't we? You can't be friends with all the other little kids if you don't buy into all this claptrap. Just like we can't be friends with all the people in society if we don't buy into all this claptrap. Just hope I don't mispronounce that. Yeah, they haven't made it illegal yet, but they have certainly made it where you are anathema to the rest of society if you believe in God's law. I wouldn't be surprised if they make much of what is in the Bible illegal to say out loud, illegal to observe, illegal to preach. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they don't make it against the law. It's already against the law in Europe. Well, I started out talking about part of the prophetic scenario, and I will remind you that before Angela Merkel invited 1.5 million Muslim refugees into Europe and demanded that each country take their fair share as they brought their blight of garbage and human waste and practices that the mind can hardly conceive of. Oh, isn't it wonderful? Yes, we need that in our society. I will remind you where that started. And it started, maybe not originally, or maybe not this is the very start, but before this happened, before the 1.5 came into Europe, and they're still coming, and before we got tens of thousands of them brought into the United States, because we can't slam the door in these people's face. That's not who we are. I'm so sick of being told who we are by people who won't admit who we are. Not only will they not admit that we are the descendants and that we are the recipients of the birthright of Israel, but they won't even admit that we're Americans anymore. We can't be Americans anymore and still subsist in this society because it would be so politically incorrect. Well, you know what? I love this country. And I want my little grandbaby, and I'll show you pictures. She is the most precious little sweetheart next to yours. I want her to grow up in safety. I want her to have joy in life. I want her to learn the right things in school. I want her to be, I want her to have her head on straight. I don't want her to be a little global warming, homosexual, friendly automaton like they're churning out by the millions in our country today. I want her to enjoy some of the carefree joy and fun and freedom and safety that I had. I want her to have that. So far, so good. She's 15 months old. But at some point, she's going to go to school. And at some point, she's going to be around a bunch of other little kids that have been brainwashed. And I just hope that we are able to give her a solid platform, a solid background, and a solid understanding so that she, as she grows up, will be able to hold her own in an environment that is absolutely just brimful of lies and nonsense. But the guy who started this immigration being, it's like Muslim refugees have become a Christian sacrament in Europe and over here to a large degree. You know who the first one that started this was? Pope Francis. What did he do? As soon as they made the white smoke go up and they elected him to the unholy see, what did he do? He announced that immigration was the greatest sacrament, Christianity. He went to the island of Lesbos and washed the feet of the immigrants, just to show what a huge, important, and emotional sacrament Muslim refugees are. And it was after the Pope made his stand that Angela Merkel said, "Oh, well, here they come. Here they come. Get ready. We gotta welcome them, you know." And even some of those who have been, in some cases, kidnapped in their own homes. You know, some of these people who were part of the welcome wagon for the Muslim refugees invited somebody to come and stay in the spare bedroom in their own apartment. There are two cases that I know of. One was a woman and the other was a man. Were held against their will and raped before the Muslim ran for his life, because once he did that, he figured maybe he wouldn't be welcome anymore. Well, here you have the person who opened their home to one of these animals, who probably fed them and housed them and kept them safe and warm. Once they get brutalized like that, and the Muslim is gone, they don't know, he's disappeared into one of these no-go zones or somewhere in one of these communities in Europe. The people who were abused, in one case a woman and another case a man, came out publicly to say how sorry they felt for the poor darling. They really felt sorry. They feel so bad. You know, they couldn't help themselves. They were having a sexual emergency, whatever it was. I didn't make that up. There's actually a case in Germany. I didn't realize this, but in Germany, public swimming pools are a big thing. I guess, you know, a lot of houses, they don't build swimming pools. Maybe they know how hard it is to keep one up. So women and children will take their kids to a public swimming pool where other women and children, well, the Muslim refugees, you can't keep them out of the public swimming pool. They get to be there too. So one of these animals follows a little boy into the men's dressing room or into the men's latrine. And I don't have to tell you the rest. He couldn't help it. He said he couldn't help it. No, he had to go and brutalize and abuse a little boy. It's a good thing it wasn't my little boy, because that'd be a dead Muslim. I get to feeling a little bit emotional about my flesh and blood. And I don't know where in the world are the German men. Where are they? Doggone it. There were 3 German golfers ahead of me and Walt yesterday. I don't know if they spoke English or not, because they were jabbering German amongst themselves. But I almost wish, you know, we backed up several times. We had to wait on them. We were within real close proximity. I wish I'd have pulled my golf cart up and said, "What is wrong with you guys? What are you doing over here playing golf in Myrtle Beach? You ought to be over there trying to save your country and your family and your women and your children. What are you guys doing? What's the matter with you?" But they don't seem to be concerned. I don't know where the German men are. I'm not sure they still got their equipment. Well, we're not going to stop. Not until they shut us up. Not until they make us stop. I've been pretty forthright. I know I've really ticked off a few people who wear their political feelings on their sleeves, and there's some lifelong party members, shall I say, who are offended by the truth. You know, I'm a heap sorry. I'm not backing off. You think that what I'm saying is graphic or straightforward or a little too brash or brazen? Can you imagine what my dad would have been saying if he was here today, or if he'd been here for the last 8 years? My dad would have blown the roof off. I'm not sure he could have continued on television in the age of Barack Hussein Obama. I'm not sure Dad could have gotten away with it, because I knew the man. I mean, you knew him publicly, I knew him personally. And he had a lot of sentiment. He had a lot of gall. He had some strong feelings that he might share with me in private that he would not dare come out with on television or in public. I think you got a pretty good taste of him. And thank goodness, I mean, that man's career, I think you know that ever since he died, and ever since the board of directors pushed me and pushed me and pushed me to where I'm doing this, I'm standing up here today because of that. I never had before. I never campaigned or sought or, jockeyed or asked for it. Not that I mind. I'm having more fun than the law allows, and I think you know that. But I cannot imagine what my dad would have been saying or writing or doing on his television programs or in his articles or in his sermons. You know that ever since he died, I've been writing the letters. That's not anything if you think I wanted to do that, or you think that that was my plan, it certainly was not. My mom had something with that as well. And I have to respect her, and I have to respect the elders of the church and some of the other board members that helped me figure out how it was possible and how I could. But Dad would have probably blown the microphone, he'd blown the TV camera, he'd have blown the screen out of your TV if he had been in a position to have to react to the things that we have seen our people do. If he had to react to what's in society, if he'd react to what's going on with the lack of respect for authority, where people think that if they come into contact with a law enforcement officer that they can mouth off to him, they can disobey him, they can insult him to his face. Maybe they can just go ahead and attack him and just see what he'll do. Good grief. We've had some 4 or 5 police officers in our country in the last 3-4 days. 2 of them shot dead out in California. I'm not sure which town it was. You know this story? The man was the father of 8 children. The woman had a little 14-month-old baby. She was supposed to be off, but they were shorthanded, so she came in to help. They responded to a domestic disturbance that they were called to, and both of them were shot dead through the front door when they knocked. That's what kind of respect for law enforcement. This other one that was act, I think it's in Milwaukee or Detroit, is somewhere up yonder. She and a male officer ended up having to wrestle this guy to the ground. I think he was on PCP. He had inhuman strength. They should have shot him. But the woman said, I wasn't going to pull my service revolver because I didn't want to be in the focus of a national what do they do? Protest. She want to be the focal point of a national protest. She didn't want riots. She didn't want looting. She didn't want them to burn the town down. So she didn't pull her gun out. And she got the stuffing beat out of her. She's still in the hospital. This guy looked just like the guy who checked my ID in Dallas-Fort Worth a couple of days ago. I'm not sure it wasn't the same dude. Unbelievable. The people who are now the greatest threat to our freedoms and to our way of life, we have to subject ourselves to them. I have to go and prove that I am who I pretend to be. I have to let them look at me naked in a scanner. I have to take off my shoes and my belt and empty my pockets. They're shouting at you in your face as you go. I'm not going to go back to the ESA. I'll do that for real here in a little while. They have destroyed the freedoms of the United States. Our Constitution has been ripped to shreds, and this Bible has been stomped on and spat upon, and pretty soon they're going to try to make it illegal. Well, you know what? I don't know how this election is going to come out. The Washington Post said Hillary's already won. And most everybody that you see on TV say, well, yeah, she's won. She's won. That's it. It's a done deal. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. And if it is, I guess whatever. It's not going to be good either which way it goes, though. You know what? I don't care which one of these 2 candidates win. For the next 8 years, we're going to have a mind-blowing scandal about every 15 minutes. You're not going to go home and turn on the TV without getting hit with something, hit in the face with something that is just makes you want to puke. I don't care one. We don't have a dog in the fight. It's a good thing. We don't have a dog in this fight. And I'm not encouraging anybody to vote one way or the other, because that's not